Prima Doll takes place in a fictional world in a country much like Japan, kind of around World War II, just past World War II. The only difference is, there's a bunch of minor differences, but the major difference is that there are automata, various robots. Okay? There's this interesting hierarchy of robots. There's one Giga robot that it's kind of mysterious. We don't know much about it. There's a bunch of robots whose basically design was copied from that. The second generation, they look like normal people basically. They just have like power packs on their back. Below them is the third generation and the fourth generation. Every generation above can basically give orders to the generation below. And control them in a hive mind sort of way. Right, that's interesting. But the war is over. This show has themes of coping with post-war trauma. We follow a cafe that is run by Automata. The guy who owns the place is like an automata mechanic, but everything and everyone that works there is a robot. Okay, there's 5 main girls. 5 main automata. Okay, we start the show by following Haizakura, who has just woken up from a memory reset, basically, and she starts working in this cafe alongside Gekka, Hokiboshi, Karasuba, and eventually another automata named Retzel. Okay, now this show has a lot of themes, and I couldn't tell you precisely what it's trying to tell you narratively, but I can give you a vague idea. I can throw some ideas out there and, maybe they'll get the neurons firing. Let's start with Gekka. Gekka, so each one of these robots has fought in the war previously, and now has post-war trauma and is trying to cope with it. Gekka's trauma is basically that she was in a very high pressure position when she was in the military. She was basically reconnaissance. And if she didn't get back to the group with appropriate reconnaissance, generally that means everyone's gonna die. And when she gets back from the war, she was always in such a high pressure position that it's like she hasn't turned off that sense of being in that high pressure position. She's constantly worried. But she has a cool exterior, but she's always on the lookout for these dangerous threats, and she doesn't seem like she's able to smile at all. She's got a mental block. Now, interestingly, she starts by saying she's broken. She can't smile, and because she's an automata, you think it's a mechanical issue. But what it turns out is automata have mental trauma the same way people can have mental trauma. Automata, turns out they also sleep pretty much a similar way that humans sleep. Humans have to sleep to heal their bodies, but also to basically sort the data of the day. And that's what the automata mainly sleep, shut down for a bit, and processes inside their processing core or whatever, sort through the experiences of the day. Much like a human. So much like a human, they can also have trauma. And Gekka, her trauma prevents her from really smiling most of the time. The reason we find out it's trauma and not a mechanical thing is because Gekka does smile every now and then, but only on rare occasion. Okay, then we got let's talk about Hokiboshi. Hokiboshi was basically kind of like a commander for a unit of robots and people. Present day, she can't talk anymore. This is revealed. This happened because she used to be basically the mascot. She would sing a song for the soldiers before they'd go into war, and they said it would give them courage, even in the face of death. The courage to face death, basically, that her songs would. And then it turns out one day she just realized when she was singing to them, they were basically like, this is probably going to be our last battle. We're probably all going to die. Can you sing us a song to give us courage one last time? And she gets up there and she starts singing, but she stops because she starts crying so much. Because she's like, is my purpose just to give these people enough courage so they can get themselves killed? And that thought just after that point, she basically lost her voice. She couldn't sing, let alone talk. She couldn't talk, let alone sing. Karasuba, her damage is different from pretty much everyone else's. She's physically damaged. She was really messed up, and then she was found and repaired. And she feels she owes a personal massive debt to the guy in charge who repaired her, which she basically does in some respect. But she has this like noble, weird honor thing about her own body or something, because she's so grateful about this body that she has, which is basically made out of like scrap parts. Her body's kind of rough, but she's so grateful for it that she doesn't want to get things replaced. She always only wants them repaired, which is interesting. Like the other trauma these characters have is pretty much fits 1-to-1 to a human in real life, but Karasuba is a little bit different. But I guess you could say that like maybe someone would come back from a war and maybe they have damage to some part of their body because of a war, but they don't want to get it replaced with something that's not them. You know, like why would I? Maybe my arm's really messed up, and I have the opportunity to get a nice prosthetic arm, but it's not me, and you know, there's something there. Retzel is actually from the other side of the war they were on, and she was reset, but she has infiltration tech. So even though she was reset, she actually had hidden databanks where some of her memories were stored. And her trauma is she struggles the most out of all of them to find a new purpose, which makes sense. She's on the other side of the war she was on now. Haizakura has had her memory wiped. Okay. And she basically goes up to each of these four throughout the course of the show and helps them through their trauma, just being so optimistic. She helps Gekka to smile and realize that she's not broken. She helps Hoki get her voice back by helping her through trauma. They find out about the rest of her unit, that they're coming back to town. They're coming into town. Because she wasn't sure that they all died for certain, but they hear about them all coming back to town, so they go to watch the boat come in, and all the soldiers get off. What comes off the boat is the flag from their unit and the cremated remains of everyone in the unit, which was like, oof, thought we were going to see some people. It was rough. But one of the soldiers in the unit, their sister, recognizes Hoki and is able to get her a letter from, you know, basically her brother, who was like a captain or something. And the captain's letter is basically like, hey, I'm probably dead if you're reading this. Thank you for singing for us always, but thank you for crying for us that last time. You cried for us, and that meant more to us than singing, because it meant that you felt our pain. They were happy that they basically weren't getting happily sung to their deaths, that someone was certainly going to mourn their passing, and that gave them just as much courage, if not more, than a song would. Haizakura basically convinces Retzel that we find our own paths in life, and you should just join us, because we're all in this together. And then Karasuba and Gekka, you know, their trauma is a little less specific and a lot more, you know, just vague. I mean, Karasuba's thing is more physical, and Gekka is just kind of like overall very serious. But Haizakura just kind of helps them open up as people and helps them function more socially. Interesting stuff. The final arc, you know, because each of those characters, their stuff is solved throughout multiple. Each one has their own arc. The final arc, I don't want to spoil it because I really like this show. It's mainly this show's mainly a slice of life, but it's a slice of life basically about a bunch of robots with PTSD or various levels of war trauma, but not necessarily PTSD, but everything, it feels like at least 10% of the stuff in this show is bittersweet. Like a lot of the wins in this show are bittersweet. And I don't want to spoil those bittersweet moments. There's so many good emotional moments in this show, and I'm a really sappy guy, so I really like that. Again, I don't really know what this show's trying to say with its narrative. What story it's trying to tell. It's basically trying to say war sucks and it changes people and breaks them. But that doesn't mean you have to change who you are entirely. The show is basically just trying to say you should enjoy life. Sometimes bad stuff will happen. Sometimes you'll lose people. But what mattered was the times you had together. Just because you lose your purpose doesn't mean you can never find a new one and you're now purposeless. Yeah. I don't really know what else to say. There's going to be a longer video already, so I'll just finish out by saying like 9 out of 10. Honestly, it was great. Don't know what to say. It's not a masterpiece. Visually, it's kind of lacking, but it was just like a really sweet slice of life that got really emotional at times. And it had themes of war, which, I'm interested in stuff, so I just kind of like the show. That's it for me. I'll see you next time.